Hi everyone, this is Mary Piggott, and I'm going to give you a few comments of mine on the proposed budget and reform plan released by Ohio for 2012 and 2013. Basically what I did was I read through the budget and quite a few things struck a chord with me, so I kind of commented on those things, and then at the end I'll just summarize, answer the questions, the prompts that we were asked. So the first thing that stuck out to me was the line about responsibility here that you see at the top of the screen. This was just copy and pasted, and then I have my comments over here. So basically this is saying that the teachers at high-performing schools just take total responsibility. They don't blame anything on the students or their students' situation, and don't take those things into consideration, and that's what every school should do in order to be high-performing. Well, what I thought was interesting about this was that it's kind of contradicted later on when the budget's proposed to distribute more funding to poor schools, or schools in poor areas, I should say. So then is it poverty that's causing the poor performance, or is it the teachers who don't care, or whatever whatever's between the lines here? So I just think this kind of goes back and forth between putting the blame on the teachers and putting the blame on poverty in those low-performing school areas, and also just high-performing schools. I think it's pretty well known aren't typically in poverty-stricken areas, especially in Ohio. So of course those teachers aren't going to blame poverty for the poor performance of their students, because it's not going to be a big issue. And if there is a student coming from poverty, well then of course they are going to be able to solve the problem one child at a time. But when you have an entire classroom full of students, all with problems, and then multiply that by 6 if you're a high school teacher, then that's, hundreds of students' problems that you're apparently expected to solve. And so I just think this is a little unreasonable. Of course, I'm going to be defensive because I'm coming from the place of a teacher. But I just don't think this is necessarily the right angle to come from. If you do want to give more funding, so let's say this is true, then the funding that you're giving to these poor performing schools, I think, should be for extra support staff or extra teachers. So teachers have fewer students so they can solve the problems, and then extra support staff, social workers, counselors, things like that, to help them solve the problems. And then I could see this, the two issues kind of going hand in hand. But if you're a teacher trying to solve all the problems and teach and, raise levels of more than a year so you can get your bonuses and things, it just becomes a little overwhelming. And that's why, I get to this at the end. I think a lot of good teachers leave school districts that are in this situation because there's just not enough support, and teachers don't feel like they can do what they're supposed to do, or what they want to do, or what they feel like they have to do. So that's, like I said, a couple things struck a chord with me. So that's my comment on that. Okay, I'm just going to move on here. Let's see, technology. This is also important to me, so let me go down to my next comment here. So I just recently got a job as a technology coach, so I'm super pro technology. But the important thing is just not to forget about the additional support staff. So like me, for a technology coach, and even a technician who's in the building all the time, so they're not trying to go to 10 different buildings fixing every kid's computer if it's a one-to-one. So the technology just needs to come with more people and more support. Teachers, I mean, they say this bread and butter, or butter onto toast. Well, of course that's what happens because they just dump this technology in because they get a grant or something, but they don't consider the maintenance, or they don't consider the support that the teachers are going to need, or even the students are going to need. If they're not used to this technology, they're going to need support too. So then it does just turn into a tool instead of you know, just a primary tool, just like instead of paper, you're using a computer, and they just don't use it to the potential because, you know, okay, so they're solving problems one child at a time. They don't have time to learn this new technology. They don't have time to learn it well enough to teach it to the new students. Um, but that's what, you know, somebody like me, a technology coach, can do. And so they just, if they're bringing this technology in and they're making funding for it, I just think they need to do it right and consider the reality of schools, and consider what technologies will work in different schools, because um, it's just different and that needs to be considered. So that's my bit on technology. Very pro technology, but there's, you know, it's not just, can't just dump it on the teachers and expect them to run wild with it. It's not practical. All right, so this is the line that contradicts the first statement, where it says, okay, well, we're going to give more funding to poorer districts. So for what? I say, okay, if it's the teachers, then you got to be bringing in more teachers, or bringing in more teachers so they have an extra period per day that they can solve problems on, and then a period to plan, and then maybe a few minutes to eat lunch in a day. So if, and okay, so that would be a wise use of money in those areas, and then also, of course, technology. But again, with the staff, I mean, obviously, poorer districts need the money, but it's just interesting that if it's just all on the teacher, what, you know, okay, I think I made my point on that already, so I'm going to move on here. Okay, so this little bonus points, I thought was interesting. Having teachers get paid per student every time they exceed growth of a year. I'm just interested if this is based on the level that the student is at. So if I have a student who comes into 9th grade with a reading level of a 5th grader, am I expected to, in order to get a bonus, raise them 5 reading levels to get them to a sophomore level in that 1 year, or am I just expected to get them to a 6th grade reading level? So I'm just, I guess, just interested in this. And just stuff like this is what pushes good teachers out of districts who need good teachers. So this isn't necessarily rewarding the right people, I think, unless it is, of course, based completely individually on a student, and value-added data, standardized tests are a tricky thing to work with in cases like this. And, you know, there's been a lot of nightmare stories about gain sharing, and so there's things like this already in place. So I guess it's good if it's done right. But this specifically, I would just have more questions about this specific proposed plan here. Okay, now we have about the restrictive licensure procedures keeping people out of Ohio. This is interesting. Oops, where do we go here? So Ohio does have really high standards for getting an education license, which I experienced. I had to go through it. I got my when I graduated from college in like 2008, so that's when we still had all the praxis. So I had to jump through all these hoops to become highly qualified. And now this statement is saying that it kind of just says now anyone with a passion is considered highly qualified. I mean, programs like Teach for America are good and they have a place, but I don't think just handing a classroom to anybody who knows a lot about something is necessarily a good idea. There needs to be a lot of training there, and some credentials on education aspect and dealing with children and pedagogy and scaffolding and all those hours and hours and dollars I spent on learning in college. I'm hoping that that's still valued here. Um, and especially in tough schools, there's more to it than just spouting off information. Um, and well, going back to solving problems one child at a time, you don't, well, I guess you could go back to the fact that you can't even learn everything in teaching school about how to be a teacher. Um, but I guess, so I like the idea of loosening the standards to get a teaching license a little bit, especially, if somebody's coming from Pennsylvania and they've been teaching for 20 years and they come to Ohio and all of a sudden they can't teach, like, okay, that's a little silly. But this seems like just kind of opening the gate, and I don't know. As long as there's some sort of training that goes with it before these people get into the classroom, I think it's fine. But there just needs to be some training. Not everybody with the knowledge is qualified, is going to be a good teacher, but plenty of people who have it would be good teachers. Okay, what do we got here? So this is from 2012, 2013. My guess is that unions are the reason why this hasn't panned out. Is this seniority-based layoff and seniority system? That's just a union issue, and that's going to be tough to fight. And if Kasich has his name on this, he's got a pretty strong history of not liking teacher unions. He's been pretty vocal about that. So this makes sense. Let's see what else I got here. This is about, this is about making college more accessible to kids. I think that's great. Let's see. I think, okay, so here I am. Okay, so I like this idea. I mean, I know a lot of students who leave high school with a whole year of college under their belt, and that's great. They didn't have to pay for it. That's 3 years less of or 1 year less of college that they have to find funding for, have to take out loans for. And the only thing I would stress is that these programs need to be accessible to these poverty-stricken schools. You need to make sure transportation is available for these kids, and make sure they have the right technology to be successful in these classes. And then I mean, this is a great idea. And if you can bring some of the programs into the high school itself, it's good. I know the school I used to teach at had a couple college professors come in and teach classes, and that was really effective. And it made it more accessible. So if we can get more programs like that, I like this idea. Okay, and then just to summarize everything, basically, the positives that I'm trying to take away from this the most is that technology is on the front burner, and I think that's right, especially for all the 21st century learners. Again, it just needs to come with the support for the teachers to implement it and actually use the technology in a way that's going to grow the minds of our 21st century learners and keep them engaged and really make them competitive. From my experience in schools, are teachers prepared to meet this vision? I think most teachers are prepared to start using more technology. Me, I'm a technology coach now, so I'm ready, I'm doing it, I'm helping teachers get through a one-to-one program. But as long as teachers aren't, continuously being attacked and given more work, I think they're going to support the use of technology, and they're going to support whatever is best for their students. So thanks for listening. Oh man, I always talk too much in these things. And those are my thoughts on the budget. Thank you.